Linda had always been a woman who worked hard for everything she had. For most of her life, she had only known two things: responsibility and sacrifice. She was a nurse who worked long shifts at the local hospital, often returning home past midnight. Her only daughter, Emily, was her pride and joy. For years, the two of them had lived together in a small apartment that was filled with secondhand furniture but endless laughter. It had always been just the two of them after Linda's marriage fell apart, when Emily was only 6 years old. Emily's father left one day and never came back. Linda did her best to fill both roles, working double shifts, cooking dinner every night, and staying up late to help with homework even when her eyes could barely stay open. For years, Linda didn't even think about love. Her focus was entirely on Emily and surviving the ups and downs of single parenthood. But as Emily grew older and went off to college, Linda began to feel the loneliness she had ignored for so long. Her little girl was becoming independent, and for the first time, Linda had time to think about herself. That's when she met Robert. It was a chance meeting at a cafe near the hospital. Linda was on her lunch break, exhausted and trying to enjoy a quiet cup of coffee, when a man at the next table smiled and asked if he could join her. His confidence caught her off guard, but his kind eyes made her agree. They started talking, and before she realized it, her break was over. Robert was charming in a calm and mature way. He told her he worked in real estate and had recently moved to the city after selling his business in another state. He spoke with ease, never boasting, but there was something about him that made people want to listen. Linda hadn't laughed that much in years. From that day, Robert began showing up often, sometimes to bring her lunch at work, sometimes just to walk her to her car after her shift. He was thoughtful, patient, and attentive. For a woman who had spent so long feeling invisible, it was like being seen again. When Emily came home for the holidays and met Robert for the first time, she noticed how happy her mother seemed. Linda's eyes had a sparkle Emily hadn't seen since childhood. At first, Emily was happy for her. Her mom deserved someone kind, someone who treated her well. But there was something about Robert that made Emily uneasy. It wasn't anything he said directly. He was polite to her, always asking about school and offering to help with her car troubles or groceries. But sometimes, when he thought no one was looking, his expression changed. His smile would fade and his eyes would go cold, like he was studying everyone around him. Emily told herself she was overthinking it. Maybe she was just protective of her mom. After all, it had been just the two of them for so long. It was natural to feel suspicious of a stranger suddenly becoming part of their lives. Months passed, and Robert and Linda's relationship grew serious. He started spending more time at their apartment, helping with small repairs and cooking dinner on weekends. He brought Linda flowers every Friday and often talked about the future. Then one evening, Robert proposed. It happened at a restaurant by the lake, a place Linda had always loved. He got down on one knee in front of her with soft music playing in the background and said the words she never thought she'd hear again. "Will you marry me?" Tears filled Linda's eyes. She said yes, and the whole restaurant clapped. When she told Emily the news later that night, Emily froze. "Already?" she asked quietly. "You've only known him for, 8 months?" Linda laughed softly, brushing it off. "When you know, sweetheart. Robert is different. He makes me feel safe." Emily forced a smile, but her chest tightened. She wanted to be happy for her mother, but something deep down whispered that something wasn't right. Over the next few weeks, wedding plans began. Robert insisted on paying for most of it, saying he wanted Linda to have the wedding she deserved. He even suggested they move into a new house together after the ceremony, a spacious place he had already found, and said he could buy in cash. Everyone seemed excited except Emily. Robert's stories didn't always add up. One day he said he used to work in real estate. The next day he mentioned managing a construction company. When she asked him simple questions about his family or where exactly he lived before, he always gave vague answers. One night, while her mother was out shopping with friends, Emily walked past Robert's briefcase that he had left open in the living room. She hesitated but couldn't resist looking. Inside were some papers, a few property documents, and what looked like ID copies. The names didn't all match. One paper said Robert Hensley, another Robert Hayes. Her heart started pounding. Why would someone have documents with two different last names? Before she could take a closer look, The sound of the door unlocking made her shove the papers back in place. Robert walked in with a smile, holding takeout food. She pretended to scroll through her phone, acting normal, but inside she was shaken. That night she couldn't sleep. She kept replaying everything in her head. The mismatched stories, the secretive behavior, the strange documents. Maybe there was an explanation, but what if there wasn't? A week later, Emily heard something that made her blood run cold. Her mother and Robert were in the living room and Emily was in her room studying. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but Robert's voice grew louder, and a few of his words carried through the thin walls. "Don't worry about the account until after the wedding," he said. "We'll sort everything once it's in both our names." Emily sat up, heart pounding. She didn't catch the rest, but the tone of his voice was firm, almost controlling. After that night, her suspicion turned into quiet fear. She couldn't talk to her mom yet. She knew Linda would defend him, blinded by love. Emily decided she needed proof. She started checking online. She searched his name, both versions of it, and found almost nothing. No social media, no business websites, nothing. For someone who claimed to have run a successful company, he seemed invisible online. Then, one afternoon, while scrolling through an online forum for local businesses, she came across a comment mentioning a Robert Hayes, who had scammed investors years ago in another city. The details were vague, but the timing matched what Robert had told her mother about his previous business. Emily felt her stomach twist. Could it be the same man? She saved the post and decided to ask one of her college friends, who was studying cybersecurity, to help her do a deeper search. It took a few days, but what they found was worse than she expected. There was indeed a man named Robert Hayes who had been investigated for fraud 5 years ago. He had used different aliases and was never officially charged. But several people had filed complaints about losing money after trusting him with investment opportunities. Emily stared at the screen, unable to breathe. The photo attached to one of the articles was grainy, but the face was unmistakable. It was Robert. She didn't know what to do. Her mother was in the middle of planning her wedding, ordering flowers, choosing dresses, smiling like a teenager in love. How could she destroy that happiness with something she wasn't even sure about? But deep down, she knew she couldn't stay silent. That night, she gathered her courage and decided to tell her mom everything. But when she sat across from Linda at the kitchen table, she froze. Her mother's face was glowing as she talked about the wedding cake and how kind Robert's friends had been. When Emily finally tried to speak, her voice trembled. "Mom, I think there's something you should know about Robert." Linda frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Emily told her everything. The different names, the strange documents, the phone call, and the online information she had found. She even showed her the article with Robert's picture. But instead of being shocked, Linda's face hardened. "Emily," she said, her tone sharp. "This is ridiculous. You can't believe everything you read online. People use fake names all the time for privacy, and maybe you misunderstood the phone call. Mom, please just listen." "No," Linda snapped. "You're trying to ruin this because you can't stand seeing me happy. You're acting like your father, always suspicious and cold." The words hit Emily like a slap. Tears filled her eyes. "I'm just trying to protect you," she whispered. "Protect me from what?" "From love?" Linda said bitterly. "Robert is a good man. He loves me, and you'll see that once we're married." Emily went to her room, heartbroken and scared. She wanted to believe she was wrong, but her gut told her she wasn't. She knew she couldn't stop the wedding, at least not yet, but she made herself a promise that night. If Robert was hiding something, she would find out before it was too late, and she would do whatever it took to protect her mother, even if it meant standing against her. Days passed slowly after that painful argument between Linda and her daughter. The house felt heavy, filled with silence that neither of them knew how to break. Every morning, Linda went about her day pretending everything was fine, humming softly while making coffee, forcing a smile as if her heart wasn't torn between love for her daughter and the man she was planning to marry. Emily, on the other hand, spent most of her time in her room. She barely spoke during meals, answering her mother's questions with short replies. She felt frustrated and helpless. She had shown her mom the truth, or at least what she believed was the truth. But love had blinded Linda. It hurt to see her mother so trusting of someone she barely knew. But what hurt even more was that she had become the villain in her mother's eyes. As the wedding drew closer, preparations filled every day. There were dress fittings, guest lists, catering discussions, and endless talks about decorations. Robert was always around, helping with decisions, charming everyone with his calm and confident personality. To outsiders, he seemed like the perfect fiancé, caring, generous, and deeply in love. But Emily couldn't shake off the unease that haunted her. She noticed things others didn't. One afternoon, when she came home early from her classes, she found Robert alone in the living room. He was speaking on the phone, pacing back and forth. His voice was low but tense. "I told you I'd handle it after the wedding," he said sharply. "Stop calling me or you'll ruin everything." Emily froze behind the doorway, her heart racing. He ended the call quickly when he noticed her standing there. His face changed instantly. His usual warm smile returned as if nothing had happened. "Hey, kiddo," he said cheerfully. "Didn't hear you come in," she forced a smile. "Who were you talking to?" He chuckled. "Just a client. Some people can't stop worrying about their investments." Emily nodded slowly, pretending to believe him, but his tone during that call wasn't businesslike. It sounded like fear or maybe anger. That night she decided she needed more solid proof. Something undeniable. She called her friend Nathan, the one who had helped her with the online search before. "Can you help me again?" she asked quietly. "I think this guy's hiding something serious." Nathan hesitated. "You sure you want to go down that road? It could make things worse with your mom." "It's already bad," she said. "But if I'm right, she's about to marry a liar." Nathan agreed to help. Over the next few days, they gathered everything they could find. Old photos, business records, and even phone numbers connected to the names Robert had used. What they found shocked them both. Robert had been married before, twice. One marriage had ended in divorce, but the second one had no official record of being dissolved. In fact, there was a woman listed as his spouse in another state. Emily felt her chest tighten. That meant Robert might still be legally married. She wanted to run to her mother immediately, but she stopped herself. Last time Linda hadn't believed her. If she came with nothing but words again, it would just push her mother further away. So Emily decided to collect as much proof as possible before saying a word. Meanwhile, Robert's behavior around her began to change. He seemed to sense that she didn't trust him. When they were alone, his tone grew colder, his patience thinner. He started making small remarks disguised as jokes. That made her uncomfortable. "You know, it's not good to dig into other people's business," he said one evening while they were clearing the dinner table. "Curiosity can get people in trouble." Emily looked up sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" He smiled faintly. "Just saying, sometimes it's better to let adults handle adult matters." His eyes lingered on her a moment longer than they should have. The smile never reached them. When Linda walked back into the room, Robert's entire expression changed. His voice soft, his arm around her shoulders, as if nothing had happened. Emily's stomach twisted. She wanted to scream, to tell her mother what had just happened, but she knew it would sound like another accusation. So she stayed quiet, waiting for the right time. A few days later, her chance came. Nathan had managed to get in touch with one of Robert's supposed former business and partners. The man was hesitant to talk but agreed after Nathan explained that a woman might be in danger. On a video call, the man looked serious. "If the guy you're talking about is tall, dark hair, around 40 and calls himself Robert Hayes or Hensley, yeah, I know him. He's bad news." Emily leaned closer to the screen. "What did he do?" The man sighed. "He's a smooth talker. Promised investors huge returns, took their money and disappeared. He's also a manipulator. He knows how to make people trust him, especially women. There were rumors he got engaged to one just to get access to her finances." Emily's hands trembled. "Do you have proof?" "I don't have paperwork, but I can send you some old emails and photos. He owes me money too." Within minutes, Emily had the files. And there it was. A photo of Robert wearing the same smile he showed her mother, standing next to another woman. The picture was dated only 2 years ago. Emily couldn't believe her eyes. She printed everything. The photo, the records, the old news article about his business scandal, and the marriage certificate listing his second wife. She placed them in an envelope and hid it in her bag. She didn't know how, but she would make her mother see the truth. That weekend, Linda invited a few friends over to finalize wedding details. Robert was there too, playing the perfect host, pouring drinks and laughing easily. Everyone adored him. Emily sat in the corner, quiet, watching every move he made. When he caught her staring, he smiled like he was mocking her. During the evening, she stepped outside for air. The sky was cloudy and the cool wind helped calm her racing thoughts. She pulled out her phone and called Nathan. "I have everything," she whispered. "Proof that he's still married. Proof that he's lied about his name and business. I'm going to tell my mom tomorrow." Nathan paused. "Be careful, Emily. Guys like that don't like being exposed. Don't do it alone." "I won't," she said. But deep down, she knew she might have to. The next morning, Linda was up early, going over the seating chart. Emily approached her, clutching the envelope tightly. "Mom," she began softly, "please just listen. I know you're tired of hearing about this, but I need you to look at something." Linda sighed. "Emily, I really don't want to argue again." "This isn't an argument," Emily said, her voice shaking. "It's the truth." She handed her the envelope. Linda frowned but opened it. One by one, she looked through the papers. At first, her face was calm, but as she saw the marriage certificate and the photo of Robert with another woman, her hand began to tremble. "Where did you get these?" she whispered. "I found them through people he worked with," Emily said. "He's still married, Mom. He's not who he says he is." Before Linda could respond, the door opened and Robert stepped inside. His eyes immediately fell on the papers in her hands. "What's this?" he asked, his voice low. Linda looked at him, her face pale. "You need to explain this, Robert." He walked over slowly, trying to stay calm. "Honey, whatever she's showing you, it's lies. She's been trying to dig into my past because she doesn't want you to be happy." Emily took a step forward. "Stop lying. I have proof. You can't talk your way out of this." For a moment, Robert's eyes darkened. The friendly mask he always wore slipped, revealing something cold beneath. But then just as quickly, he smiled again. "You're a smart girl," he said softly, "but you've been misled. Those documents are fake. Anyone can make something like that online." Linda looked from one to the other, torn and confused. Her hands shook as she held the papers. "Robert, is it true?" she asked weakly. He reached for her hand. "Of course not. Please don't let this nonsense ruin what we have. I love you." Emily couldn't believe how easily he could twist things. "Mom, please," she begged. "He's lying. He'll hurt you." Robert turned toward her, his voice now icy. "You've said enough." The tension in the room was unbearable. Linda's eyes filled with tears as she looked between them. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know what to believe right now. Please just go to your room, Emily. I need to think." Emily wanted to protest but knew it was useless. She walked away, feeling the familiar ache in her chest. Once again, her mother had chosen to believe the man she loved over her. But this time, Emily wasn't going to give up. As she sat on her bed that night, she made a silent promise to herself. If her mother couldn't see the truth, she would show it to everyone else. She would find a way to stop that wedding, no matter what it took. The wedding day came faster than Emily expected. It felt unreal, like she was watching someone else's life unfold. The house was filled with excitement, flowers, and laughter, but none of it felt right to her. She watched as her mother moved around the room in her elegant white dress, glowing with happiness, completely unaware of the storm about to come. Linda looked beautiful. Her hair was softly curled, her makeup perfect, her eyes bright with love. She turned to Emily with a smile that broke her heart. "How do I look?" she asked. Emily forced a small smile. "You look amazing, Mom." But inside, her chest ached. She wanted to tell her mother one more time to stop, to walk away, but she knew it wouldn't matter. Linda was convinced Robert loved her, and nothing could change her mind. The ceremony was being held at a lovely garden outside town, decorated with white roses and golden ribbons. The sky was clear and the air smelled of fresh flowers. Guests filled the seats, chatting and smiling, unaware of what was about to happen. Emily sat in the back row, her hands trembling around the envelope she held tightly in her lap. Inside were all the papers, the proof of Robert's lies, the photos, the marriage certificate. She had spent the past week double-checking everything, making sure there was no mistake. Her friend Nathan had even helped her contact Robert's real wife. The woman, named Claire, had been shocked to hear that Robert was getting married again. She told Emily that he had disappeared over a year ago, leaving her with unpaid bills and a trail of lies. Claire had agreed to send a signed statement and copies of documents proving their marriage was still legal. Emily had everything she needed. Now it was time to act. As the guests stood and the music began, Robert walked down the aisle looking calm and confident, his suit perfectly tailored, his smile wide. He looked like the picture of a perfect groom. When Linda appeared, everyone gasped softly. She looked radiant, holding a bouquet of white lilies, walking slowly toward the man she believed was her future. Emily felt tears sting her eyes, not of joy, but of pain. She couldn't let her mother make this mistake. Not today. Not ever. The officiant began speaking, his voice warm and steady. "We are gathered here today to celebrate the union of Robert and Linda in marriage." Emily's heartbeat quickened. She glanced at her mom, who was smiling shyly, her eyes locked on Robert. Then the moment came, the vows. Robert took Linda's hands and looked deeply into her eyes. "Linda, from the moment I met you, I knew you were special. You brought light back into my life, and I promise to love you, protect you, and cherish you forever." The guests sighed softly, touched by his words, but Emily could hear the hollowness behind them. She could see the slight twitch in his jaw, the flicker in his eyes that others missed. When it was her mother's turn to speak, Linda's voice shook with emotion. "Robert, you came into my life when I thought love was over for me. You showed me that second chances exist, and I'm so grateful to have found you." Emily couldn't listen anymore. Her hands were shaking, her pulse racing. Every word was like a knife twisting deeper into her heart. The officiant smiled and turned to Robert. "Do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Robert said smoothly. "Do you, Linda, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Before her mother could answer, Emily stood up. "Stop," she said loudly. The crowd turned, murmurs spreading instantly. Linda froze, her face pale. Robert's smile faltered. Emily's hands were trembling, but her voice grew stronger. "You can't marry him, Mom. He's lying to you. He's already married to someone else." Gasps filled the air. Robert stepped forward quickly, his expression changing from surprise to anger. "What are you doing, Emily? This isn't funny." "It's not a joke," she said firmly. She reached into her bag and pulled out the envelope. "I have proof." The officiant looked uncomfortable, glancing between them. "Maybe we should—" But Emily was already walking down the aisle, her steps steady despite the fear tightening her chest. She stopped in front of her mother and handed her the papers. "Please, Mom, read them." Linda's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. The guests leaned forward, whispering among themselves. Robert tried to grab the papers, but Emily stepped between them. "Don't touch her," she said sharply. Robert glared at her, but said nothing. Linda's eyes moved quickly over the documents, marriage records, old photos, and finally the signed statement from Claire. Her face turned white as she realized what she was holding. What is this?" she whispered. "It's the truth," Emily said softly. "He never divorced her. He's still married. He's been lying to you this whole time." Robert let out a forced laugh. "This is ridiculous. She made all this up. She's been trying to sabotage us from the start." Emily shook her head. "You can say whatever you want, but the evidence is right there. You can call the woman yourself if you want. She'll tell you everything." For a moment, the entire garden was silent. Even the birds seemed to have stopped singing. Then Linda looked up at Robert, her voice trembling. "Tell me the truth. Are you still married?" Robert's jaw tightened. "Of course not. She's trying to ruin our wedding." "Then explain the marriage certificate," Linda demanded, her voice cracking. "Explain the photo of you and her from last year." Robert's face changed. The calm, gentle expression vanished. He looked angry now, cornered. "You don't understand. That woman is crazy. She's been trying to destroy me for years." Emily could feel the guests staring, waiting for what would happen next. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. Linda took a shaky step back, tears filling her eyes. "Is that why you didn't want me to meet your family? Why you kept saying they were out of town? You lied to me, Robert. You lied about everything." Robert tried to reach for her, but Linda pulled away. "Don't touch me," she cried. The officiant quietly stepped aside, clearly not wanting to be part of the scene anymore. Emily's friend Nathan, who had come to support her, recorded everything on his phone just in case Robert tried to deny it later. Finally, Robert's mask broke completely. His expression hardened, his eyes cold and empty. "You ruined everything," he muttered under his breath, staring at Emily. "I saved her," Emily said. "You would have taken everything from her. But you're done now. For a second it looked like Robert might say something more, but then he turned and walked away quickly, pushing past the stunned guests. He didn't look back. Linda stood frozen, the papers still in her trembling hands. Everyone was whispering, some in shock, others in sympathy, but Emily ignored them. She stepped closer to her mother and gently touched her shoulder. "I'm sorry, Mom," she said softly. "I didn't want to hurt you, but I couldn't let you go through with it." Linda looked at her, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't believe you," she whispered. "I thought you were just being overprotective, but you saved me." Emily hugged her tightly and Linda held on as if afraid to let go. The crowd slowly began to leave, giving them space. Hours later, after everyone had gone and the sun began to set, Linda and Emily sat together on a bench in the empty garden. The decorations still swayed gently in the breeze, a quiet reminder of what could have been. "I feel so foolish," Linda said softly. "I wanted to believe in love so badly that I ignored the signs." "You're not foolish," Emily said. "You just trusted someone who didn't deserve it. You believed in something good, that's not wrong." Linda sighed, leaning her head on her daughter's shoulder. "You must have been so scared to do that in front of everyone." "I was terrified," Emily admitted. "But I knew if I didn't stop it, I'd regret it forever." They sat there for a long time, not speaking. The sun dipped below the trees and the air grew cool. The day that was supposed to be filled with celebration had turned into one of heartbreak. But in a strange way, it also brought them closer together. Finally, Linda stood and looked at the place where she had almost said, "I do." She took a deep breath and said quietly, "No more lies. No more pretending. From now on, it's just truth, even when it hurts." Emily nodded, her heart swelling with both relief and sadness. She knew things wouldn't be easy for her mother, but she also knew she had done the right thing. As they walked away from the garden hand in hand, neither of them looked back. The past would stay there with the broken promises and the man who had tried to deceive them. The future, though uncertain, was theirs to rebuild. Together. The night after the wedding disaster felt like a blur. The house was quiet, but not the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the kind that came after something heavy had broken. A silence filled with exhaustion, disbelief, and hurt. Linda sat on the couch, still wearing the pale pink shawl she had taken to the ceremony. Her hair was loose now, her makeup long gone. She looked lost, like someone who had woken up from a dream that turned into a nightmare. Emily sat across from her, not sure what to say. She had imagined stopping the wedding so many times in her mind, but she never thought about what would happen after. She didn't feel proud or relieved. Just sad. "I'm sorry," Emily finally whispered. Linda didn't look up. "You don't have to be sorry. You saved me." Her voice was soft, tired. She rubbed her forehead and let out a shaky sigh. "I just can't believe it. Everything he said, everything he promised. It was all a lie." Emily wanted to hug her, but she knew Linda needed a moment. "I should have seen it," Linda said, shaking her head. "There were signs. He always avoided talking about his family. He never let me visit his office. I was just so happy that someone wanted me again." "Mom, don't blame yourself," Emily said gently. "He fooled everyone. That's what people like him do." Linda nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I kept thinking I was being given a second chance at love. I didn't realize it was just another test." For the next few days, she barely left the house. Friends called to check on her, but she avoided most of them. The embarrassment was too much. The thought of everyone whispering about her wedding that never happened made her stomach twist. Emily stayed close, cooking meals, cleaning up, doing little things to make the days easier. Slowly, her mother began to talk again, not just about what happened, but about everything she had ignored. "He once told me he was handling some business issues," Linda said one morning while sipping tea. "Said he needed to move money around before we got married. I thought it was normal, but now I think he was planning something worse." Emily frowned. "What kind of business?" Linda looked down. "He said he wanted to put my name on one of his accounts so I'd be part of everything after the wedding. He kept asking for my bank details for joint investments. I told him I'd think about it, but I never actually gave him anything." Thank God, Emily's stomach sank. "So he really was trying to take your money?" Linda nodded slowly. "Yes, and if you hadn't stopped that wedding, I might have signed everything away." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. She had always known Robert was bad news, but hearing how close her mother came to losing everything made it even more terrifying. Later that afternoon, there was a knock at the door. Linda hesitated before answering, afraid it might be him. But when she opened the door, 2 police officers were standing outside. "Are you Linda Evans?" one of them asked politely. "Yes," she said cautiously. "I'm Officer Miller. We're investigating a man named Robert Hayes. We believe you might have some information that could help us." Linda froze. "You mean my—" She stopped herself. "My former fiancé?" "Yes," the officer said. "He's wanted for multiple fraud cases across different states. We've been tracking him for months. We heard about what happened at your wedding and thought you could assist." Emily and Linda exchanged stunned looks. The officers came inside and asked a few questions. When she met him, what he told her about his job, how much access he had to her finances. Linda explained everything honestly. She showed them the papers Emily had gathered, and even the text messages he had sent her about joint accounts. The officers took notes carefully. One of them nodded in approval. "You were very lucky, ma'am. He's done this before. Most of the time, women don't find out until it's too late." Emily felt a strange mix of anger and relief. "So you'll arrest him?" "We're working on it," the officer said. "He's been moving around using different names, but thanks to your information, we're closer than ever." After they left, Linda sank into a chair, speechless. "He's been doing this to other women," she whispered. "All this time I thought it was just me." Emily sat beside her. "You stopped him from hurting someone else next. You did the right thing." But Linda shook her head. "No, you did. I didn't want to believe you. I let him into our lives. You're the one who saved us." For the first time in days, she reached out and hugged her daughter tightly. From that day forward, things slowly started to heal. Linda began attending counseling sessions offered at the hospital where she worked. She started talking to people again, not with shame but with honesty. She told her story so others wouldn't fall for the same kind of trap. Meanwhile, Emily returned to her classes, but she couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. She often wondered how many other women like her mother had fallen for men like Robert, smooth talkers who seemed perfect until their true faces were revealed. A few weeks later, the police called. They had caught him. Robert was arrested in another state after trying to scam another woman under a new name. When they checked his records, they found several open fraud cases, including one linked to Linda's bank information. When Emily told her mother, Linda sat quietly for a long time. Then finally she said, "I don't hate him. I hate what he did, but I won't let it define me." She looked stronger then, steadier than Emily had seen her in months. "I thought love meant ignoring your fears," Linda said, "but I've learned it means listening to your heart, to your instincts, and sometimes to the people who love you most." Emily smiled softly. "You always told me to trust my gut. I guess I just learned it from you." Linda chuckled through her tears. "You did. You just reminded me of it when I forgot." They decided to leave the old apartment soon after. Too many memories lingered there, of late-night arguments, of flowers that no longer meant love, of laughter that had been fake. They moved to a smaller but brighter house in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't fancy, but it felt safe. Life slowly returned to normal. Linda began smiling again, not because someone made her, but because she wanted to. She took up painting, something she had stopped doing years ago, and started volunteering at a local women's shelter to help others who had gone through similar heartbreaks. Emily often joined her on weekends, sharing their story when asked. The women there admired Linda's courage. Some even called her an inspiration. But one evening, something unexpected happened. Linda received a letter in the mail. It was from Robert. She opened it carefully. The letter was short, written in neat handwriting. He apologized, not in the way that asked for forgiveness, but in the way that admitted guilt. He wrote that he was sorry for what he did, that he had lost control of his life chasing money and lies. He said meeting her was the only time he felt something real, even if he didn't deserve it. Linda read it quietly, then folded it and placed it in a drawer. When Emily asked what it said, she just replied, "It doesn't matter anymore." That night, she stood by the window looking out at the stars. She felt free, not because justice had been served, but because she finally let go of the pain. For so long she had thought love was about being chosen, about being needed. Now she understood that love was about respect, honesty, and peace. Emily joined her, standing beside her mother, both silent for a while. "Do you ever wish none of this happened?" Emily asked. Linda thought for a moment. Sometimes. But then I realize, if it hadn't, I wouldn't have learned how strong we are. I wouldn't have learned what real love looks like. It's not perfect, it's not a fairy tale. It's you and me, still standing after everything. Emily smiled, her eyes soft with emotion. Then maybe it happened for a reason. Linda nodded slowly. Maybe it did. Outside, the night air was cool and calm. For the first time in a long while, Linda felt peace. Not the kind that came from pretending everything was fine, but the kind that came from facing the truth and surviving it. She turned to her daughter and whispered, "You were my real blessing all along." Emily hugged her, holding on tightly, and for the first time since the chaos began, they both felt whole again.